Hazak u'baruch. B'ezrat Hashem, Mincha today is going to be 8:15. Please be on time. We were learning the halachot Muktze. We were talking about using a needle that is inherently called kli shemelachto le'isur. It's a stitching needle, so its primary function is of isur. I want to use that to take out a splinter, and we said that's permitted because that's called using kli shemelachto le'isur letzorech gufo, for the sake of its own entity, of its own structure. And therefore that is permitted to be done. Another very common example is sometimes, especially with women, they want to use the same needle, a stitching needle, to combine different parts of their clothing. A lot of times it needs to be connected, maybe it got disconnected or something happened, and they want to stitch using just the needle itself, not a thread, but the needle itself, to put it in through once, twice, three times, until it's able to hold it, to clasp it in its place, wherever the garment is or whatever the design of the garment is. Is that mutal to do on Shabbat? Hamav talks about this. Although there were some authorities that said not to do this, halakha lema'aseh is permitted to do on Shabbat because that is not the melacha, that is not the violation of stitching. Stitching is when you take a thread and you put it into the needle and then you start going ahead and connecting parts of the garment, and the thread is what connects them. That's stitching. But if you're using the needle itself to be what's holding the parts together, that is not the melacha of stitching, and that's permitted. The same thing would be true for using a bobby pin. A lot of times you have a part of a garment that ripped, and you want to use a bobby pin to hold it together. Obviously, it's going to be very temporary in nature. That would be permitted to be done on Shabbat. It's not included in the melacha of stitching. But the chidush here is, even though the thread itself, the needle that's being used to thread itself is muktze, but nevertheless, since you're using it for a function that is mutar on Shabbat, it would be permitted to handle it in order to go ahead and to combine the different parts of the garments together or the scarf together. And that would be mutar to do on Shabbat. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.